And recognition and celebration of the Blair families winning the 2020 Leopold Conservation Award. It's my pleasure, and I'll introduce myself. I'm Jim Falstick with the South Dakota Grassland Coalition, which is one of the in-state sponsors of the Leopold Award, along with the South Dakota Cattlemen. And on behalf of the Sand County Foundation, who actually are the ones that have the award trademarked and issue it in a number of states. We're fortunate today to have David Bailey with us, who is the Western Regional Director for the Leopold Award for Sand County Foundation. And I'm going to turn the mic over to David, and he'll make comments on behalf of Sand County and the award, and then we'll also hear from Cattlemen, South Dakota Grassland Coalition, and a number of other guests that are going to make presentations today. So thank you everybody for coming. If you didn't get coffee and a roll, make sure you grab it. So there's plenty back there. David?
Thank you, Jim. It's my pleasure to be here with you guys today in South Dakota. Under the circumstances, I think I'm the only one that's traveled in the last 6 months to anywhere. So I actually live in Utah, just an hour north of Salt Lake. Our main office for Sand County Foundation is in Wisconsin, and that's where Aldo Leopold spent most of his life. And there's a little memorial shack in his honor back in Wisconsin. But the Leopold Conservation Award has been around for, we're coming up on 20 years. It first started in Colorado, and it's expanded over the years. And now we're in 22 states. We're in 8 western states, and the rest in the Midwest and the East. And we're constantly on the lookout to expand the award throughout the states that we're not in right now. So, and South Dakota, what'd you say, 11 years? This is the 11th annual award that we've given out. And we have a host of wonderful alumni. We call them LCA alumni. And I want to kind of, first of all, just recognize any of those past winners that are here today. And I'll just start from 2010. Rick and Marlis Dowd of the Dowd Ranch. 2011 was the Mortensen family, Mortensen Ranch. 2012, Capriva family, Capriva Angus. 13, the Guptill family. 2014, Perman family, Rock Hills Ranch. 2015, the Jorgensen family. 2016, Mike and Monty Cronin. 2017, the Hammond family, Bluebell Ranch. 2018 was the Kamek Ranch. And 2019, who's 2019? Johnson Ranch. Who's here? Anybody here from those? Stand up if you're past winner. Let's give them a round of applause. You know, winning this award takes a lot of dedication, obviously. Dedication to conservation practices, and not only that, but it takes a little effort. It takes a lot of effort to fill out the application. There's a lot of information that has to be written down and compiled, and it's not always an easy task. And so I really appreciate those that have taken the time to fill out the application and really put themselves out there for others to see. That's really what this award is all about, is standing up for the things that you know that work, and not being afraid to show and share with your neighbors and your friends about what you do and what conservation means. So we also want to recognize our partners and sponsors. This award's not possible without the many partners and the sponsors that we have. And if you turn your paper over to the back side, you can read, and I'll share with you. We have the South Dakota Cattlemen's Association, the South Dakota Grassland Coalition, and the Sand County Foundation. That's the three main partners. And then we have a list of sponsors: the First Dakota National Bank, South Dakota Department of Ag, South Dakota Farm Bureau, South Dakota Fish and Parks, South Dakota University College of Ag, Food and Environmental Sciences, the South Dakota Discovery Center, the USDA-NRCS, the Audubon Dakota, Bad Rivers Ranch, Belle Fourche River Watershed Partnership, Daybreak Ranch, Ducks Unlimited, Capriva Angus, McDonald's, Millborn Seeds, North Central SARE, the Pheasants Forever Professional Alliance, South Dakota Association of Conservation Districts, the South Dakota Soil Health Coalition, the Nature Conservancy, the Todd Mortensen family, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Partners for Fish and Wildlife, Wagner Land and Livestock, and we're always on the lookout for a few others. In fact, I think we're missing a couple on here that I can think of offhand. I think the soybean Association needs to be on there. And also, we just added a national sponsor. Is American Farmland Trust just became a national sponsor of the program. So we have some great partners and sponsors. Are any of our partners and sponsors here today? Will you please stand up? We really appreciate what you guys add to the award and the partnership and sponsorship that we have together. So the award consists of a few items. Obviously, there's a $10,000 cash award that we give, and we also have this Leopold crystal. I'm not going to lift it up because it's kind of heavy, but although Leopold is obviously the guy on the crystal, and he's the one that wrote the Sand County Almanac, which I think most of you are familiar with, which is basically our conservation Bible. The award represents about 130 different families that have won it over the last 15 to 20 years, and that's constantly being built in all the states that are participating. The award represents all kinds of diverse agriculture operations, from rice growers to dairy farmers to obviously cattle ranchers. It's diverse in its aspect and how we recognize what conservation means, all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast. And so it's my honor and my pleasure to present the award to the Blairs and the Blair family. They're deserving of this award, and we are grateful that they have joined the alumni ranks. And we're glad to be able to come and visit their ranch. So, Jim, who's next? Yeah, let's have the cattleman come up and say a few words. Who's representing the cattlemen?
Eric Jennings.
Thank you. I am Eric Jennings from South Dakota Cattlemen's Association. On behalf of the association, I just want to congratulate the Blair family for this award. This is a fantastic award. I really enjoy this type of award because, you know, we've been hearing for several years how we need to tell agricultural story. And this is a perfect example of agricultural story, of a multi-generational ranch that has been here practicing conservation programs for many years, who totally have adopted and believe in that mantra of leaving it better than you found it. And you know, it's so important for conservation, it's so important for the environment, and it's so important for that story to be told. And I appreciate we being able to tell that story through this award. I've known the Blair family for many years, and I can't think of a more deserving family, a better family for doing that. They've been members of South Dakota Cattlemen for many years, and I'm proud to represent an association that has the quality of people in it, like the Blair family. So congratulations again, and I think that most of you would know that I don't stand up here and talk a long time, so you're not going to be surprised if I pass the mic off.
Thanks, Eric. Where's Brett? Next. Brett, will you come up and say a few words on behalf of the Grassland Coalition?
This will really be short. My name is Brett Nix, and I will speak on behalf of the coalition. I don't know the Blairs well, but I'm looking forward to getting to know them better. After reading through their story, I'm reminded of a verse that comes out of Scripture in Luke 16:10 that says, "Whoever is faithful with little will be faithful with much. Whoever is unjust with little will be unjust with much." Obviously, the Blairs have been faithful with little because now they're faithful with much, and we appreciate that. And appreciate you setting that standard for all of us to strive for. And this day and age, it's not everybody that does what's right just because it's right, and especially in the grassland world. So we appreciate that, and thank you.
Thanks, Brett. Okay, now, we could invite the Blairs to come up, all of them. Hopefully they've chosen a spokesperson. We're gonna let them speak, and then we're gonna after they're done speaking, we're gonna have Brett and Nick come up, Brett and Eric come up and take a picture real quick. So, Blairs, this is the best smelling cabin barn I think I've ever been in. I don't know what you do. Maybe it's these nice wood chips. Recycling.
Yeah.
So, you want to be the spokesman?
I can be. I don't really want to, but I can be. So on the left here is my brother Rich. We started out this partnership, I don't know, mid-'80s probably. You think it's 78? Okay. But yeah, at that time, it had been my dad and my brother Rich and I, and then into the 80s when we bought my dad out at that time. And next to him was Jeannie. And then we have Rich's son Britton, his wife Amanda. We got Jack there. As you can see what he's going to be a hand, that boy is. Then my wife Wanda. Next to him is Chad and Mary and EC, Kate, and Kim.
The monster.
The monster. And then next to Mary is Rich's daughter Kelly and Bo Dahl, which you see there. A little history. So my grandfather came to this area in early 1905. His parents had sent him out. They were living in Missouri at that time, and they sent him out to look for a new place for the family to go move. And they gave him two choices. One was Oklahoma, and the other one was the Black Hills of South Dakota. And I think lucky for us, he chose the Black Hills of South Dakota. The area that they settled in was south of Sturgis. My grandfather's place was right next to the National Cemetery there. It's all biker bar, that area in there now. And then also down Pleasant Valley and up in the Tilford area. So that whole stretch of interstate in there was kind of where the Blairs settled. And he had 3 brothers and a sister and they were the original Blair brothers, was my granddad and 2 of his brothers. And they amassed pretty good holdings through the years. And then after World War II, when all Dad and his cousins all came home from the war, why, the guys got together and they split everything up at that time. And so So then my granddad and then my dad and his brother formed a partnership, and Dad moved to the place down home there in '54, I believe it was. And he had like 3,200 acres in there is what he started out with. We grew up on a 150 head cow ranch. We ran a few yearlings and did quite a little wheat farming. And at that time, I was all summer fallow. And I spent a lot of hours on a summer fallow tractor. Rich, he said we never did like anything about wheat farming. Didn't like to plant it, didn't like to harvest it. You know, there was nothing that we liked about it, so.
Don't like to trade it.
Don't like, yeah.
Don't like to trade it.
So, yeah. Speaking of that, well, probably one of the, you know, in building the ranch, there's always been things that's come along that you look back on that changed how you did things. And one of the big deals was Rich, after he got out of college, and he come to me one day and he said, you know, I've got this blonde-haired girlfriend that went to work in Denver, and he said, I'd really like to go work in Denver. You think you'd get along without me for a couple of years? I said, yeah, sure. So he got tied up with Cattlefax in Denver, which is a marketing organization, through NCBA, and spent a number of years down there that, I lost the train of thought. But,
Marketing, cattle marketing.
yeah, it's all on cattle marketing. So for the last 35, 40 years, why, that's one thing that he always took care of was the marketing end of the operation. And that, you know, and learning how to market, you know, is just, I think is just as important as learning how to conserve the grass and everything else. It's, you know, been able to put us on a higher plane. And along with that, you know, rotational grazing when it came in, I mean, that was a big change to the operation. Synchronized AI, when that came along, that was a big change to the operation. You know, looking at being able to take these cattle and go into a high quality market with them, as far as we're running high percentage of prime. The best set of steers that we've ever had was a 72% prime animal. And these cattle typically pay 35 to 40 bucks a hundred, you know, as to be hanging weight over a normal carcass. And that'd be a normal choice carcass if you're looking at a select. But you know, all of these things have helped benefit the operation. And the other thing, you know, you talk about, well, doing the right thing. The thing we've found, doing the right thing is very profitable. You're able to run more head, putting in these water systems. You're able to keep the cattle out on the land. And, you know, and it allows you so much more, being able to do so much more flexibility in the, and we've had a really good journey. I'll say that. And I appreciate your thoughts there. That was big, I thought. You know, we'd like to thank all the sponsors to the Grasslands Coalition. You know, it's pretty neat to see past winners that have sat out there and that are sponsoring this now. And, you know, and I think that's going to be a goal for us that we'll hope to sponsor. One more thing, I forgot to mention Peyton back there. He's been working for us with us for a couple of years now. We really appreciate it. He's a good guy. So with that, you want to add anything, Rich?
Oh, just a couple brief things, you know, it's the things that have really changed the operation, and buying this ranch is one of the things that's really changed the operation and allowed us to grow and kept us in the bull business. I mean, if you're gonna be in the bull business, you gotta have a place to run cows, and this is a great place to run cows. And the other thing that's really changed in the operation is having the boys back. And if they weren't here, I think Ed and I'd be in Arizona or something. But it's sure great to have them. Chad's maybe gonna tell you a little bit about this ranch and maybe what we've done here.
Hello, I'm Chad Blair. Again, thanks to all the sponsors. Thanks for everybody for coming, friends, neighbors, people I don't know. But I'm sure we'll be friends by the end of the day. I don't know where to start. I could touch a little bit on what we did at the other ranch. You know, in my lifetime, just starting with rotational grazing, and we kind of started with yearling heifers, you know, try it out with a small group, and we had some smaller pastures that we kind of had already in place that we grazed them on, and then we did some cross fencing, and we started that rotational grazing with those and saw the benefits of that almost immediately, and started adding more pipeline, water tanks, that type of thing, and then we merged into doing it with the cows too, and cut up some of the bigger pastures that were on the ranch. There's some maps hanging on the walls back here, and the smaller size maps are of the ranch down home by Sturgis, and the bigger map is of this ranch up here. And so you can see all the cross fencing that we did. We saw benefits of that, doing it with the pairs down there, and have rolled that ranch into just running cows and calves. Now the yearlings are typically on some lease ground that we also will try to rotate pastures on where we can. I'm not sure how much in depth I need to get on that. This ranch that we're at today, we purchased in 2014. The fall of 15, well, the summer of 15, we started drilling the deep well here and got it pumping water by that August. Me and Mary and the kids moved up here in August of 15, lived in a camper right here by the pink house, and went putting in pipeline. And I think that first fall we got 12 miles of pipeline in, got the winter pasture watered.
The first loop was.
Yeah, and got the winter pasture watered so we could run cows up here that winter. And we put in, I'm not even sure, maybe 4 to 6 miles of fence that fall too. And basically, so what we've done on this ranch then is just kept going with it. We have our water system is basically complete right now. There's about maybe a couple of half-mile deals that I want to put in, but other than that, it's in place. I'm not even sure what there is. I don't know if Justin knows or not. There's 25 to 30 miles of pipeline and somewhere around 50 water sources, and we've probably put in 12 to at least 12 miles of fence, cross fence. This ranch had basically 2 big pastures out here to the west and maybe 4 other pretty good sized pastures, and we've pretty much cut them all in half. So the average pasture size on this place is roughly 1,200 acres. There's some smaller than that, of course, but kind of the main summer grazing is 1,200 acres, and I'll run the cows on this ranch in 2 different groups, and we'll AI them, both groups, and we'll AI second cycle on both groups too, and that can be a challenge as far as rotating through our pastures and getting them around to where we need to, you know, handle those cattle, and then getting them worked back out and moving around. But I think we've seen some changes already on this place. It was in pretty good shape when we got here, don't get me wrong, but I think we've seen some improvements in some areas that I've been concerned about, moving them in, moving them out, and things like that. I don't
Maybe
know
talk
much
a
else.
little about sage grouse.
We do have sage grouse on this place. We have 2 sage grouse leks. One's a primary lek, and the other one's kind of a overflow, would you call it, Matt? Or if they get too many on one, they'll start using the old one. But we do have a fairly good population of sage grouse here, and we try to work with that. as much as we can. You'll see it later on the tour. We've put reflectors up on the fence to help with the birds, so they don't have fence collisions. And, we've buried our storage tanks for our water system so they don't stick out of the ground. And anything that we can do to help the sage grouse, we've been trying to do. I don't use those pastures where the leks are, in the breeding season, and we try to avoid that. And work with the wildlife, I guess, while we're doing our rotational grazing. I don't know if you want to say anything, Britton?
You want to talk about the people you've worked with?
Yeah, we've had a lot of partners. On this ranch, we've worked a lot with, of course, NRCS and the Sage Grouse Initiative. We had a Sage Grouse Initiative equip contract is how we got most of the pipeline and some of the fence done. U.S. Fish and Wildlife's been a good partner with us. The Bird Conservancy of the Rockies has partnered with us on some fence. South Dakota Game Fish and Parks helped me put up some deer fence for some hay yards. I'm sure I'm missing somebody. The dams, U.S. Fish and Wildlife just helped me rebuild a dam this summer. And they've actually, in the past, before we owned this ranch, they helped rebuild some dams, quite a few of them on this ranch. I know I'm missing somebody, and I'm sorry if I do, but we've had a lot of good partnerships. The BLM, we partnership with the BLM a lot, just because there's a lot of BLM scattered on this ranch and South Dakota State Ground, but the BLM's out of Belle Fourche has been really good to work with and willing to be flexible with us on some of our grazing that they weren't accustomed to, I guess maybe I'd say in those words. They kind of wanted you to go in and use up your AOMs and move off, where I want to go in and get off, rest it, come back, and so that's been fun working with them with that, and they've been really good to work with.
It took a little while.
Yeah, it was took some time to get where we were all happy, and we got there, and it's been really good. But at any rate,
I don't know, has anybody got any questions?
And we'll be around. I mean, you
Yeah.
can come up and ask me anything. I'm probably a little better speaker one-on-one than I am with a microphone in my hand. But Todd.
In this, you talk a little bit about a succession plan, having brothers and cousins and second cousins involved. That's kind of a long, hard pull. How is your business plan organized in that respect?
Yeah, that's a great question. Me and Britton are very fortunate in the fact that Rich and Ed are willing to bring us into the ranch. We're not just employees at the ranch, we're part of the fold. And I guess one of the strategies that we've come up, that Ed kind of had come up with, is we have some LLCs. Most of the ranches and everything is in an LLC, and so then we all have shares in that. And then at some point we can start buying more shares of that from Ed and Rich or my mom or Jeannie, or however, which one is set up that way. And that, as of right now, that's our succession plan. We all have a percentage of it, and then we'll be able to purchase more as time goes on. Or maybe they'll give some to us. Which would be nice.
Ain't going with us.
But yeah, no, the plan is to just keep buying them, and then that'll, at some point, if it ever happens, that will support their retirement. I don't see either one of them ever really wanting to just do that, so.
And LLCs are kind of like rabbits. Once you get one, then pretty soon you got another one, pretty soon you got another one. But it's a really good tool, and it's worked well for us. But, I mean, basically Blair Brothers is an operating company. And we lease like this place, this is Two Top LLC, and we lease land from Two Top.
serve oil LLCs.
Yeah.
That's the moral of the story. Some of them own land and some of them don't, and they kind of lease things from each other, or however it works out for what their entity is, but that's what we do. Todd, did you have a question?
How has having the sage grouse affected your management? Has it been plus or minus or just?
It's been a super huge plus because we got a sage grouse initiative equip contract that helped pay for most of the pipeline and fence. But honestly, the management, day-to-day management, it really hasn't affected much that we do. I mean, like I say, you put up a few reflectors, or, you avoid a pasture a certain time of year, or, try not to put in high pole gates anymore, especially out towards the Lex and things like that. But it's nothing that's difficult or has put a burden on us by any means. They've been pretty easy to manage, and we really honestly want to see them thrive. We get excited when we see them out there. It's really neat.
You grew up pretty used to moving cows a lot,
Yeah.
changing pastures.
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up, that's just what I've been used to. I mean, we started this, Rich and Ed started rotation of heifers in the early 80s, at least,
Late, yeah.
mid-80s.
80.
And so, I mean, basically, it's been, since I was 5 years old, I've been rotating cattle, and I'd go out when I was EC's age and, rotate those heifers by myself in those little pastures. And so I'm just used to it. And it's on a different scale on this ranch. I mean, the pasture size down at the home place are average maybe 300 acres or less, and up here they're 1,200 acres, but it's the same principle. And, we don't move them as often up here just because the pasture size is bigger, but it's the same principle, rest and repeat, basically. And we just go off the simple math of take half, leave half for the whole deal, but, we're always monitoring the pastures and, from year to year, and we'll see maybe one today that if it gets used a little hard one year, I'll try to not use it as much the next. And then some places that didn't get utilized last year, I'll try to compensate and balance it every year, year to year. It's always different. You can't write it down on the paper and say, this is how many days I gotta be in here. I mean, yes, to some extent you can, but, the monitoring and the moving them is what we constantly do. The kids are good about it. They come out and help move cows, and they're just talking about the grass, and it's pretty fun. But just come up and ask me a question about, or any of us, if you want, whatever we do. But go ahead, Matt.
Chad, could you touch on the wildlife friendly design through your interior cross fences and how that's impacted your management?
Sure, yeah. So a lot of the fences that we put in new, we did wildlife friendly, which I'm sure most of you have seen, but it's smooth wire at the bottom, at least 16 inches high, and top wire can't be more than 42 inches tall. And there's some spacings in the middle, but it's not very tough to accomplish. And so, yeah, we've put in a ton of those. Our new fence, we've done. I didn't do it down here in these calving pastures, which is what we're in right now. But I certainly could have, and I don't think it would have affected anything. In fact, it'd probably be all right. Have a smooth wire on the bottom, and those baby calves, if they get pushed to a fence, at least they could go under it and not get kind of smashed up against something. And so, yeah, it really hasn't changed anything. I think that design is very well. We have a lot of it actually on perimeter fence that the BLM replaced a couple years ago, and it's the wildlife friendly 4-wire fence. And of course, your perimeter fence, if you're like me, you'd just assume it was a 5-wire, pretty good tall fence, but these aren't, and it hasn't been an issue. I mean, it's certainly doable, and I would encourage people to use that. We better probably keep moving along. I think there's a lot of things to do today, but like I say, we're open to whoever wants to ask us something later on. Come
On
up
the
and ask.
tour especially.
Yeah, on the tour too. Thank you. Let's stay here for a minute. We're gonna do. We need somebody that's strong. EC? Don't drop. You hold that.
Go ahead and everybody go up.
We're going to get a quick picture. And as most of you know, this COVID thing has kind of changed things for us. We typically have, these guys have already had the videographer out, and we have a video in production that we typically show at the Cattlemen's Convention. With that canceled somewhat this year, we're gonna probably do things a little bit different. So we want to present the Blairs with the Leopold Conservation Award for 2020, and hold the sign up, and then
Do I?
maybe we can put that sign in the middle. Just say, those gonna be covered though here. Maybe you guys scoot in just a little bit. All right, thank you, Blair. Please give these guys one more round of applause. All right, we're going to learn a lot more about the Blairs and the activities we have going forward. Jim, you want to talk about the rest of the schedule?
Thank you, David, and congratulations to the Blair families. I think for the rest of you, you don't want to overlook the value of recognizing the good things that people do in agriculture, and the Blairs have done it for a long time. So I'm really proud to be involved with the fact that the Blairs are the winners this year. And I also want to thank all the sponsors. David already did that, but as one of the in-state sponsors, this award would not happen if it wasn't for all the sponsors. And there's a couple things that David didn't mention. Number one, South Dakota has the most financial sponsors of any of the awards, unless something's changed. And I think South Dakota ought to give themselves a hand of applause as well. So let's give those sponsors another round of applause. I want to call on two of those sponsors, and of course there's a host of them here, but when we look at general support for conservation in South Dakota, actually there's three that come to my mind as being hugely involved. The Department of Agriculture for the state of South Dakota is one of them, and I don't believe there's any representation here today unless we call on Gary Kamack. Would you care to make a comment, Gary? Okay, would you care to make comments on behalf of the department? And then I'm going to call on Bill Gibbons, and I didn't even have a chance to warn him, but Bill be on deck. And I'm also going to call on Mr. Zimprich on behalf of Natural Resource Conservation Service, because I think there's three lead agencies, but we really appreciate the support from everybody. So I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, I'm Patricia Wyrick, and married to a rancher, so some of this stuff I've been familiar with, but South Dakota Department of Ag loves seeing, we want to promote and conserve our natural resources. I didn't expect to speak, so keep it really short, and we see what the Blairs are doing and really appreciate it. So.
Thank you, and thank you for being here. Bill Gibbons has changed titles enough times in the last few years. I might not get this right, but I believe Associate Dean and Head of Extension. Am I close?
Experiment station.
Experiment Station, yeah, see, I knew I'd be close. For the College of Ag, and it goes on from there, foods, and you tell them.
Yeah, certainly. So the College of Agriculture, Food, and Environmental Sciences, this issue,
So on behalf of the college and the university, this is a great honor for the Blair family. It's great to see all the past winners that are here. I've had a chance to talk to some of them. Our stakeholders in the state are really the leaders in agriculture in the nation, and we recognize that. We do our part, but you guys really make the impact in the field. And so this is a wonderful recognition of conservation tied to economic development, raising families, raising our state. And so again, very, very much congratulations to the Blair family, as well as all the past winners as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Jeff Zimprich, USDA Natural Resource Conservation Services. You heard Chad reference the value that an EQIP contract had and what they've accomplished on this ranch. And I think you can spread that across the state in a number of areas. And it's a pleasure to have you here as state conservationist, Jeff. So thank you. And
Thank you.
Say just a few words. Three things I'd like to hit real quick. One, USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service is about private working lands conservation, right? And what better example do we have of that than today? So we got working lands, it's providing so many products. We've talked, not only today did we hear about, the products that we normally think of agriculture, but we talked about wildlife, and we could also go into clean water and soil and carbon and so many other things. So all of those values. So Blair's, congratulations. Thank you for the work you're doing. We know it's not easy, but again, just another round for them, please. And then the second to last thing I wanted to do is there's a whole mess of NRCS employees in the room. Could you all stand up? All the NRCS folks. I need to know who's all been taking the day off and getting out here to enjoy the day. Okay. Whole bunch of NRCS employees and some partners. Now, all the folks that actually have worked on the Blair operation at one time or another in your career. You may not today, but you're either working on it today or you haven't. All those folks, NRCS, please stand up. Okay, keep standing for just a little bit. Keep standing for just a little bit. So at NRCS, you get a chance to go out and work with amazing operations on amazing landscapes. And that is what we really hold in our heart, right? That is so important to us. But when it gets reflected on the great conservation work that the Blairs have done, this is what we really cherish. So to all of you, thank you for your hard work to help the Blairs get to this point. And then the last thing that I just want to say is all the partners. Jim, the partnership that we have and all of us have together to make conservation work in South Dakota is just a blessing. So thank you to all the partners that are out here. I'm anxious. This is one of my best days of the year to get out on the Leopold tour, especially in 2020 with what's been going on. So I am having a blast and going to for the rest of the day. So thank you all. Appreciate it.
thanks, Jeff. There is one thing, and David, I don't think you brought it up, but it is appropriate, that goes right along with these partners and sponsorships, and that's the fact that there's a $10,000 cash award that goes along with this honor of being the Leopold Award. I don't think you mentioned that, did you? Did you? Okay, I'll re-emphasize it, because it does echo the importance of the award. So, at this time, Dave Olala, I want to call you up here. Dave's been involved in this area first as a teacher, well, probably not first as a teacher, but as a teacher when I got to know him anyhow. Later as extension, and now consultant and rancher, and the list goes on. And he's going to spearhead a presentation on the area and the ranch and what's been involved, and also a number of NRCS. I'm not going to start down the list. I know some of you that are involved, but I don't know in what order, so I'll let you start, Dave, and you can introduce the next one and on down the line. And thanks for doing this.
Well, thank you, Jim, and good morning, everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces. And yes, a lot of you know I probably retired from Extension here in February. Perfect timing there. And went right to the sheep shed and then the calving, and and it's been a great year that way. But, I wanted to, and I'm honored to have this opportunity to visit with everybody. You know, the good Lord says as we follow our faith in Christ that we need to be around like-minded people. And look at our people here. And you know, what is the good Lord telling us? And these messages that all of us that are here, and I've seen a lot of your faces at so many programs, and what are you providing the rest of the world as you go out on your mission to interact with others? Look at the leadership we have in this room that is showing how ranching can exist with nature. And you know, you start thinking about, when I started teaching in the late 80s and early 90s, there was all these meetings about dealing with public lands and private lands and these NEPA deals, which is the National Environmental Policy Act, and how that fit into our customs and cultures, and that they always had to assess that so they didn't mess up our livelihoods. But look at the paradigm shift that we're making in what ranching is now to fit our customs and cultures. So what I'm going to do, and it'll be pretty quick, and we'll tie into some of the things that have happened on this ranch, but certainly you're going to hear very similar themes of what the Blair family has said, and congratulations to them and their leadership and their vision and where they're going with things. We need that out here. We need places like this, as well as the other Leopold leaders, to showcase what ranching and agriculture is in cooperating with our environment and making it stronger. And that's the voice we need. We know that with urban America does not always see us that way, but we've got those messages out there. So who's our timekeeper? Where we go till lunch? So what do we got?
15 minutes.
Okay. Good. All right. Well,
If we start trying to get back on schedule.
okay. So we got
Half
half an hour. All right. Good. So I'll roll through some of these pretty quickly, and just want to give some perspective. And a lot of you know that, but out here, as people settled out here, I want to talk about that and how things came to be, and how we've created a circle in our travels as humans. We know that if you look at this slide, that prior to European man coming and screwing everything up, that the Native Americans that were here had to live in balance with nature. There was no other choice, as they were nomadic in many cases. And you could take a year in these places which changed back and forth, but in general, that's kind of how they fell out. You can see the star up here where the Blair Ranch kind of generally sits. Thank you, Justin. And if you want to flip this slide. And then this kind of sets us up. You know, this part of the country was one of those last ones to be settled because of the treaties that were made with those nations to not settle in these areas. And so the last big treaty was the one of 1868, which was trying to hold these for the Native Americans to make their living. But you know, as European man made his manifest destiny to settle this entire country, we didn't always do everything right, and we know that. It's part of our heritage, and we need to accept that. Would you click again, Justin? But you know, like I said, they walked with nature, and out here we had small ruminant animals, and the deer and the antelope. And you want to hit it again? And hit it one more time. Oops, somebody died. Okay. And obviously our large ruminant, and estimates of 60 million in the Great Plains at one time. So when people were trying to tell me that cows create methane, there's only 48 million cows in the country as opposed to 60 million. And so, you know, some of those things are falling short of what they're claiming. You click that again. And certainly, you know, the sage grouse is one of those stories out here that I don't know if it's all man that's really put them at threat, or just the way nature works in a lot of cases. But we do know that if we function in balance with nature, gosh, there's a thought, and we ranch that way, research shows that you'll have more grass if you manage for wildlife. Well, you heard what Chad was saying and what the Blair family is doing, as well as a lot of the Leopold Award winners. Listen to what they've got to say about how they work with nature. You know, man's arrogance about trying to control its environment has really embarrassed us in a lot of ways, but look at the circle that we're making in regards to coming back around and working in harmony with nature, and then that allowing us to be prosperous and productive. Like that again. So we know we started out as Custer came down through here, and again, let's see, get the right one. Oops, go back. You can see where the ranch is settling, and so when Custer made his expedition to come down here and look for gold, he went probably right across some of this ranch. You know, certainly crossed over by Castle Rock and some of that. And some of those stories, they got in some pretty good rains and got to learn what gumbo was like, and lost a lot of mules and wagons in that deal. So it should have been a sign in some respects. You want to click that again. And then you can see, obviously, when gold was discovered, we had a lot of migration of livestock into this area to serve the mining communities, for sure, and open settlement after that treaty was ignored and people started to settle in this part of the country. And so up in this northwest corner was some of the last that really got settled. And some would make the claim that maybe that was some of the worst ground that we had in the state. And what makes it tough is the gumbo, the heavy clays. You want to click that again. But who promoted settlement out here in those early 1900s? Like Ed had said, you know, his grandfather came in 1905. That was pretty much when everyone was settling out of this country in a lot of respects. There was some earlier, but the railroad promoted a beautiful, bountiful oasis of grass that needed to be tilled to make farmland. And so we know from the Europeans that didn't have much, they were looking for a place to settle and bought into that idea. And how did they deal with agriculture? It was all tillage for the most part. So if you want to click that. And so this is right when South Dakota was still in the Dakota territories, moving towards statehood. This was Butte County, and Butte County at that time took up Harding and Perkins and Butte, and obviously named for the buttes that are prominent throughout this whole landscape. And you know, again, some of the last country to be settled. Click that again, Justin. This map, it's hard to read, but you know, as folks came in here, a lot of them up in Lawrence, Butte, and Harding County were Scandinavians. A lot of them were Finns, and that's where my name comes from, is from Finland. They come and work the mines, and then they homesteaded up in a lot of this country. Certainly, a lot of Germans, English, Norwegians, and Irish. So kind of what was left over in a lot of respects as that migration worked the last of that corner of the state out. Go ahead, Justin. And this was at the time they were fighting over where to put the capital, and I kind of found this this little bit of a map. You know, they were trying to promote here, but they showed how the agriculture fell out within the state at that time. Would have been in the mid-80s to 89 as they were trying to settle on statehood. But you can see a lot of cattle, sheep on that northwest corner up into this part of the country. More cattle, sheep down next to the reservation and throughout. And why do you suppose sheep was there? How did they fit into that environment as opposed to cattle? Yeah, they're a desert animal. And what's one thing we lack out here? Water. We are a water-starved country, so that kind of dictated how things were going to get settled here. Where do you suppose the cattlemen settled when they came in? Along live streams, because we sure didn't have the technology and equipment to be building a lot of dams, and what dams they made weren't that big and didn't last, carry that long. So, just because of the nature of this country, you're gonna hear that theme over and over again, is water drives everything, as it does in almost all of the West. What happens, what type of agriculture you're gonna have. You click that again. And it's just another picture. You could find this anywhere in South Dakota. Those folks came and settled, started with sod houses, dugouts were big. How many of you on your ranches, on my summer range, I think there was 3 dugouts on there, and I know Ed's been on that place. There's no live water. How did they come out and say, on this quarter, this is where I'm gonna make it? And I don't, there's no live water out there east of Newell. The optimism they had, I just shake my head. I would never have the fortitude to even think that would work, but it's a struggle. But those people that settled this country had to have an idea of something better than what they had that they'd left. Like that again. And of course, we can't get past this country without talking about sheep and the establishment of that, and the sheep wagons, the sheep teepee there. You can see the hooks and the crew that were probably out working sheep at one time. Click that again. Anybody recognize those? I think Jeff's probably got some on his place. Yep, those are stone johnnies. That's where the sheep herders stacked them, some out of boredom, some to locate or kind of lay claim to an area where they were going to graze their sheep from year to year. Because you got to remember, when they settled, you just had an area, and that was kind of how that worked. And hopefully you got along about how big your area was. And I'm sure in drought years that got pushed a little further back and forth, but they somewhat used those as claims. And then you can see again, the nice thing about sheep in the wintertime, you don't need water. They can get by with snow as opposed to cattle. Click that again. But some of this country, as we know, the Hereford cattle, after they squeezed out the Texas Longhorns, they went to Herefords, and we know the Hereford breed to be a good, thick-hided, range-type animal, slow maturing, maybe not the best in a lot of performance and productivity, but they fit the environment, and that's what we always talked about with sheep too. You look at how those things fit, and click that again. But this is the sin that caused a lot of problems in this part of the country, was the plow, but we didn't know any better. And there's a lot of things we claim we didn't know any better, and that's what gets me excited about this new paradigm shift about going back to nature. Even our agriculture, as we look, and I'm with the Soil Health Coalition now, we manage farmland like we manage rangeland, and we keep those principles in mind. And we're going back to nature. How we would manage rangeland in Nebraska or Oklahoma is a little different than how we do it here, but that's the same with our farming, and we have to lessen our expectations. But they had such an optimism and hope, and some of these soils, truth be told, as you work up into Hardin County and get into some of those formations, are beautiful soils, and you put a little water to them, and they grow very bountiful crops. But every one of you that's lived out in this country knows we are a land of extremes. And so we talk about averages, and I'll show some of them, but we're never average. Too hot, too cold, too windy, not enough rain, too much rain. We never have this, what we would call average type of experience. You want to click that again. And certainly a good typical picture that everyone likes to show: one place overgrazed, another place managed well. And don't you imagine, when they settled this country, a lot of these people were farmers. There were some that moved in that understood ranching, but we didn't have those ideas of rest and leaving residue to hold water and to recycle nutrients. We just took every bit we could. And truth be told, we still do that with our hayland. We just take it all, and we don't put anything back, and we do it for years and years and years. And it comes to bite us. Our soils are not resilient. We have this boom or bust thing because of our environment. And you want to click that again. Floods, I can remember as a kid living on Willow Creek. That creek would flood 3 to 4 times a year. And so what's changed? Has our climate changed? Because now it doesn't flood at all. Them putting dams in, I think people started leaving grass and managing. And now the water doesn't run off. Because I'm on the bottom end of Willow Creek. So whatever happens, all the way up here, Willow Creek starts over on Jeff's place, not too far from here. That's 45 miles. We don't get flooded out. Well, things are changing. Want to click again? You can kind of see the soils. It's hard to read this map. I guess I've got a pointer here, but you can kind of see the star where the ranch is, and this big old belt of Pier shales. Goes around the Black Hills, goes all the way over here to Pier, way up there. And again, it's just ancient seabed, and the oldest of seabeds, and the worst of seabeds, because we got her all. We got salt, and we've got poor porosity, and we've got bentonite clays, and anything that, if we ever thought that this should ever be arable or farmed ground, most years it's going to tell us it's not. And then as you go up, you've got the Fox Hills formations, a lot sandier. That was later seabeds. And then you've got the Hell Creek Formation, which the more recent, like Tyrannosaurus rex dinosaurs can be found in a lot of those. And then you get into some of the Cannonball formations up there. But all of them tend to have gas and oil. Us not so much here, although there is some. Oh, I was going to ask Chad or Ed, how deep was your well here that you guys had to drill? 3,800. Exactly. That's kind of common in the Pier shales. East of Newell's, same way. And then you don't have to go very far up here, and what do they get into? A 300-400 foot well, and it'll be pretty good water. But that's the struggle. To get to anything here, you've got to go a long ways down. And again, Jim alluded to it, and some of the others. Without that assistance and cooperation with the government entities to help bring this here, there are a lot of things that will never happen to allow us to ranch out here. Because without those pipelines, there is a lot of this country, especially like this year where we dried out, you wouldn't get to some of those corners of those pastures. And I always tormented like Tate, the NRCS has created a lot of overgrazing problems by putting in pipelines, because people are able to take cows to grass that they never could in a drought. So our leadership is that we got to teach people not to overgraze it, but to make good use of those newfound places of grass that they never had in drought years. You want to click that? This is really hard to read, so I won't get into too much of it. We have such good ground here in the Pier shales that we run 0.5% to 1.7% organic matter. Anybody claim to do any better than that? That's tough living. And out here that in a drought year, in the tough drought years, that old Western will put a sprig of grass about every foot apart. And it'll be the same height. It'll be 1.5 feet tall. And I got grass. And you get out there, the density is so minimal. And then in a wet year, 2 or 3 inches apart is how it responds. But that's how those grasses evolved on this type of climate and serve us well. There's no better grass than Western and green needle, but it's really impacted and reacts to the environment it's given. Bentonite, as you get more over here, becomes an issue. The shrink swell potentials are unbelievable on these soils, and any of you that have tried to build a house know that when in the spring the door shuts, and then in the fall it doesn't, kind of thing, but everything's floating. Go ahead. The picture of Castle Rock, not too far away, similar to showing the formations of erosion and the buttes that make Butte County, but You get down in these bottoms, you're getting into some pretty heavy pure shales. Click it again. I was talking about those averages. We've got about 148-day growing season from when it doesn't freeze to when it does freeze. And our average temperature in the growing season, the highs get into the 77s, lows in the 50s, which isn't bad, but it's an average. So a lot of times it's a lot warmer, or some years we've had some cold ones. Wife and I were talking, before this year, we had not had a temperature above 100 for about 3 or 4 years, in which, you know, you start thinking about it, that's true, and then you get in some of those stretches from 2000 to 2008, it was pretty much a drought that whole time, and there was common days over 100. So that's how things change. I'm not saying exactly climate change, but just our nature of our country out here runs in these stints. Annual precip, 15 inches. That's what we get to work with. And when does that come? April, May, June, July. You get 65% of your moisture those months, and the rest of it's pretty dry. So the nice thing, again, because the grasses that are here responded to the environment, what are they doing? They're curing out with nutrients in stem, and they stand the rest of the year. So the western and green needle just serve us well. Buffalo and blue grama grasses that are below that are there. And then what's the one plant that everybody forgets about that can hold about 12% protein even in the wintertime? Remember that, Rod? About this tall. Is the grass like? Sedges. We forget about sedges all the time. That's one of those plants that, you know, from a sheep herder's point of view, that's gravy. Got to keep those things in great shape all winter long, and you wonder what they're eating out there. And there's these little green, not frozen sedges, and if cows can get at some of them, they'll do very well. Click that again. A breakdown out here, most of this country you're going to find at least 50% western, in the 20s on the green needles. So those are your two moneymaker grasses that you got to rely on. Short statures are the blue grammas and buffalo grasses, which happen to be warm seasons, and very few do we have. You can find blue stems in those, but not in an amount great enough to really make a difference up in this country. Then the sedges, like I said, 10% of this is sedge, and many times we overlook that, but that's at least for those that are good at grazing, which sheep and goats can do, that sure benefits them. And then a few shrubs thrown in there sparingly, some wild rose, some buckbrush, yuccas here and there, but nothing to really make a big difference. Forage production can range from 700 pounds an acre on a good hard pan flat, or a bad year, up to 3,000 pounds of native grass. You know, a ton and a half is not necessarily uncommon if you've had, and you know, I think we did that in a lot of cases this year because our grass was made last year. And the cool season shut down in June and July, and whatever they've got, you know, that's what I was always taught. What you had the middle of June is what you had the rest of the year. And that's kind of how you figured your carrying capacities. And so many folks out here will start their initial stocking race, not that they don't make it more denser, but they'll start at 3 to 4 acres per animal unit per month, depending on how the year goes along. You click that again. How are we doing on time? Everybody recognized last year, right? This clover from miles and miles, you can not see it, and that's just the craziness of this country. And what do you do? And again, what helped make the grass this year is all the nitrogen that clover put in there last year. And so I never see them as a nuisance. I see this as an opportunity. Would you click that? Just another one. It's hard to see back here, but showing a bare butte in the background, and click it again. Here's a contrast, and I see it a lot, and if you ever fly over this country, wherever someone's got sheep in a clover year, you don't see the clover. It's the darndest thing to look down on. And then you got your cows back there wading through it, and again, I think we're missing opportunities. It's hard to always predict, but we know because it's a biennial that it's gonna be there the next year if we're paying attention out there. And certainly intensive grazing with cattle can open those canopies up just as well as sheep can, but you gotta want to be out there moving wire. Quality of life things you guys have to decide. Click that again. And again, just talking about extremes, when we get piled on at times, go ahead. This is up near the Cave Hills. You know, nice wide open country, not a lot of protection other than south slopes or some draws, or where you could put some tree belts or some windbreak structures in. Go ahead, Kristen. This is just a quick reminder of Atlas and the brutality of some of this country and what it can do to us. It's not always heaven here, although we'd like to think it was. Go ahead. There's another picture of that. Click it again. And you know, again, like I talked about, water makes a difference, and this is where we'll let Tate get into some of these things and Justin can talk about. But like I said, the NRCS has done a great job of bringing some things in, and the big part of it is water. Touch on some of that you guys have done here.
Yeah, so like Chad said, they bought this place in 2014, and I was pretty fortunate. I got to work with them both in Sturgis. And so when they came into the office, I knew who they were and how they operated. And Gary was working on the design for this, and you'll see we'll go up to the storage tank later, and they had some difficult conditions for trenching. And Gary kept wondering if we should do a design there, and Chad was talking about this yesterday, and you know, he said, we'll get it done, don't worry about it. And I finally had to tell Gary, yeah, they'll get it done. It's Blair's. You know, when it comes to conservation and doing the right thing, they got a high revving engine, I guess you could say. So as they alluded to, when they bought this place, we had the sage grouse initiative going on, and they came in, and this ground has historically never had good water on it. So what they did, they dug the well up here, and then we'll kind of look at it earlier, but they go up to the top of the peak, and they have, how many gallons of storage do you guys got up there, 6,000? 30,000. Or 30,000, okay. Yeah, 30,000 gallons of storage up on top of the hill, and then that gravity feeds out to, I don't know, it's 25 to 30 miles of pipeline out across here. And then, like Chad said, they came in and the pastures were really big here, and they cut them all in half and started rotational grazing and being able to, they added a lot of flexibility into what they can do here, because with BLM, they're great to work with in this county, but there is regulations on when you can and can't graze, and so yeah, they did a lot of improvements to increase that flexibility to be able to properly graze throughout the year. I don't know, that's kind of the long and short of it, but so yeah, they did a lot of, we were talking about it yesterday, they checked out the last practice and they completed all this in 5 years, which is pretty amazing to install that much, you know, what do you say, 12 miles of fence and 25 miles of pipeline and 50, 60 tanks in 5 years. So it just kind of speaks to their conservation ethic and their ability or their drive to do the right thing for the land. So I guess that's all I got to say about up here.
Hello everybody, I'm Tate Lance. I was actually the district conservationist in Sturgis from about 2004 to 2008, and I didn't really have much to do with this place up here, but I was lucky enough to work on them with their stuff just north of the Butte. And you know, I think it'd be not appropriate. I mean, we have NRCS employees or SCS employees who worked with them way before I did. Rod Baumberger's here. He did a lot with the Blairs much before I was ever there, and I don't think, unless Daryl Vig made a fly-in appearance, he's not here today, but I know that he was pretty instrumental in the rotational grazing projects that they started in the middle of the 80s. So, you know, they've had a good working relationship with NRCS for quite some time. I'll just tell a really quick story about, we were talking about regulations and things like that. When the one thing that we did with them, we had worked with them on an egg waste system up for their feedlot out down there And we came up with this really elaborate egg waste lagoon system, and Ed came in and he said, this isn't gonna work. I mean, it was crazy expensive, and we went through all the numbers, and he's just like, this is not what we're looking to do. And I don't know if it was before or after he saw their design, but he was on a tour in Iowa, I believe. Ed, is that right? When you guys were down there? And they were doing this practice called the vegetative treatment area. And he came back with that vegetative treatment area idea, and we figured out a way to cobble together our practice schedule, and we actually did one of the first, if not the first, vegetative treatment area in South Dakota up at the Blairs, and it's still functioning. They still use it. There was a lot of partners involved with that, but a lot of studies were done. I know SDSU did a lot of production studies on the grass that they were getting out that. I know they were getting 2 to 3 cuttings when typically they were getting about 1 cutting off their other hayland. So, the beautiful part about working with the Blairs was no was never an answer. It was, we'll figure it out. And it was a great experience for me as a young DC coming into a county, and and them being nice and close to town, and being on the board. We had Rich on the board at the time. Just a great experience, great people to work with, and like I said, it's awesome when the answer is never no. So that's all I got to add, I think. Unless anybody got anything else. Chance, do you want to say anything?
You will see, when we do the rainfall simulator a little bit later, we collected a sample off of the VTA. So we'll get to compare that to some native rangeland as well as a neighbor's crop field.
Good.
Does anyone have any questions?
I guess one last thing too is during lunch and then back in the back corner back there, there's a slideshow playing. One of the things that was difficult about this tour is both of their operations are pretty amazing, but just because of distance, we aren't able to travel to both of them and check them both out. So we just kind of put together a presentation of both places. So take the time, I'll put it up here, playing on here, and then it'll be back on the screen and back, and just check out some of the things they've done on their other place. And yeah. Other than that, I guess we're at lunchtime.